Saishale, Wayakantake, Earthkeeper. Your feet are wet from many lands. Keep your heart clean, and you will see the unseen. Saishale, Wayakantake, carried over nations' water. Saishale, Wehasate, Earthkeeper, you have broken through the protective embrace. Now face the visions put forth long ago. Wisdom from the heart of the mother, revealing the patterns of your heart. You are a teacher, the keeper of the lands. Wisdom from the heart of the mother. You draw forth secret wisdom with every breath. Keep close to us. Waishale, Wakantake. Sit without fear. Trust us to show you light. You have worked hard to hear us, and now it is time that we reveal to you the patterns of your heart. Saishale, Wahasate. Hi, Graeme. How are you?
Hey Farida, it's good to see and to speak to you. It's been a while, so it's lovely.
Yeah, and you as well. Thanks for coming on. For those of you listeners who have not heard of Graeme Waterfield, he is a Tai Chi Qigong instructor. What, you've been doing that since 2005, is that correct?
Yeah, my whole journey has been about when I was probably about 25 years, but about 15 minutes in 15 minutes, yeah, it felt like that. 15 years into the journey, I took up Tai Chi to help deepen my meditation practice. So yeah, that's right.
Nice.
Mm.
And I thought of you for this podcast because I really enjoy your perception of meditation as, presence and allowing flow to happen and
Mm.
allowing your life to come to you, um, in terms of purpose, which is what I love to talk about.
Beautiful.
Mm,
Yeah, beautiful.
yes, it
Mm.
seems you take a very Taoist approach, with one of my favorites as well, Lao Tzu. Do you want to speak on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean that it's interesting. I think I keep on when I do my Taoist teachings, if you like, online. I keep on wondering why I do so many Taoist teachings because I don't know that I'm a Taoist, and I don't really follow traditionally what you would call like some kind of Taoist practice or study Taoism. It's almost come about accidentally. My main path has always been a devotional path. You know, that's the one I've been doing for so many years. But the Taoist understanding, I suppose, just comes from I do Tai Chi most mornings, so you know I do it out in the fresh air, usually at dawn time, sometimes in the evenings. But the Taoist understanding, I've kind of stumbled across by accident without really trying to do that. And what it's taught me is really that all these practices they lead you to the same place. And it's interesting. I guess I speak from a Taoist perspective because I usually do my teachings and posts while I'm sat in nature, maybe, or just following a Tai Chi practice. And I suppose the essence of Taoism is within the type of practices you find in Taoism. So for example, when I'm teaching Tai Chi, this is a moving meditation. So I have the principle of movement, but also the principle of meditation, which is stillness. And so I guess the teachings come from that place, but yet then I listen to some maybe Taoist teachers, and they speak about certain Taoist practices, certain Taoist they see as Taoist perspectives, and I don't really resonate or find myself aligned with them. They seem quite complex.
Mm.
Um, Whereas if I read the pages of the Tao Te Ching, or some of the translations, I find that the simplicity seems to resonate with me. It doesn't talk about complex practices, or like elements, or the way the chi is meant to flow in the body. Lao Tzu really points to emptiness, emptiness of being, which is all the masters that I've read about speak about this. Christ was a Taoist, and that means Lao Tzu was a Christian, in so much as they're going to the same source of knowledge. Whereas Lao Tzu would speak about the emptiness, or transcending, or being free from thoughts and thinking. Christ teaches that as a piece that is beyond the understanding, when of course understanding is thinking. It's a conceptualization. And so they're talking about the same thing. So when Christ is given a Taoist teaching, like, be like the birds in the air, they don't reap, they don't sow, yet they're completely looked after.
Mm.
Lao Tzu is pointing to exactly the same truth. The Tao means the great way of things. And Christ says, I'm one with, like paraphrasing a little, but I'm one with the way of things. I am the way, I am the truth. So that they're all speaking from the same place. So I guess it comes out in Taoist language, and I call it the Tao quite a lot, because I kind of think there's more of a mystery to the word Tao. No one really understands it completely. Whereas if I use the word God, then everyone starts arguing. So, and everyone presumes they know what you're talking about, and everyone then goes back to their bad experiences with a priest, or getting shouted at school, or and so it gets very messy again. So I suppose maybe I use the word Tao because it sounds a bit more hip. So less people, a lot more people are kind of into, oh, what does that mean? And as soon as you say the word God, it's like most people, oh, that's not for me, this guy's a religious person.
Right.
Which you call,
That's
so
an
I guess that's
interesting that, people turn it into religion.
Mm. And a lot of the Tao teachers I come across, I find the same. That there's so many people that have turned the Tao into a thing, a religion, a philosophy. But yeah, as the beautiful line of the Tao Te Ching, the opening line is, the Tao that can be spoken about. The word, really, the word Tao itself it points to an illusion if you're just using the word Tao. But so the Lao Tzu says the Tao is the best explanation I've come up for whatever this is. And interestingly, I believe in Vedanta, the philosophy that yoga sprouted from. They didn't have the word God or anything like that in the Vedas. I'm told, not a Vedic scholar, but that path also interests me. That the first word for the ultimate truth in Sanskrit was tat, T-A-T, and it just means that. So it's again, it's not a thing. It's that. It's almost like the word that is pointing to something, as opposed to being the thing itself. You
Right.
know.
But I love that. I am a yoga instructor, and I always said, "Tatwam asi," that
Yeah.
you are that which you seek. And
Beautiful.
you also speak of, I think it's a book called "I Am That" by who's that by?
It's Nigs. I think, let me get this correct. Nigzagadatta Maharaj. I think that's how you pronounce his name.
Mm.
I'll tell you why I like him. I like him because he was a chain smoking guy who lived in the slums of, I think, was it Calcutta? May have been Calcutta. And he was quite grumpy, and he was accustomed to surviving in the environment he found himself. He hadn't grown up in a monastery. So I like him because so many of the saints and Buddhas are portrayed as floating around on a lotus flower on top of a mountain, speaking with a calm voice. And I don't feel any alignment with that. That's not me. Like, but the idea that so there was this kind of Buddha who was awakened in the slums of Calcutta and made his money out of selling roll-up cigarettes on the street, and was quite grumpy, but somehow in his presence people travel from all over the world just to sit in that presence, because within it they had this thunderbolt realization, this instant awakening that they were that also, temporarily in the early days. So I quote him a lot because I feel his teachings are very grounded. It shows, it's not about, he spoke about his physical body just living out its karma. Someone asked him why once, you speak about disattachment, yet you smoke roll-up cigarettes. How can you talk about disattachment? And well, he said, this body, it's living out its karma. It's just doing what it's doing.
Mhm.
I'm the witness of it living out its karma. He said, so therefore, as I don't have any trouble with smoking or not smoking, but you have a problem with me smoking, it's you who are attached to the idea of me not smoking. It's like, wow, these simple, profound teachings. Not that I recommend smoking or not smoking, but I like him for that reason. And yeah, his famous book, this was an international book, and I think there's a power in this as well, because he lived a very simple life. He wasn't interested in money or fame or anything like that. He just taught. And so one day, I think his daughter wrote down his teachings. Thought, wow, the world, or at least these teachings need to be put in a book. So she wrote out this book, I Am That. And so he wasn't even interested in writing a book. It was just written about his teachings, and then became this international phenomenon that he had nothing to do with. So again, it shows the power of just, as Lao Tzu, writes the Tao Te Ching not as an international bestseller, a book to make him famous, but as a series of teachings for a guy at a guard post as he was riding off into the mountains on an ox. So they weren't even after fame, or fame just happened for them.
Well, it's amazing how the underlying current for one finding their purpose, so to speak, is this idea of being presence, or being present, and
Yes.
also um, the witness that, you know you're just here as the witness of that being presence. So I think these days it seems that we're moving more into just the flow and the presence, and
Mm,
allowing that to come through you. And for me, that's how I began to understand my quote unquote purpose, and how this podcast came about, because I spent so much time seeking and wanting somebody to please show me, tell me who I am, tell me how I do, tell me what I am. What is this? What did I sign up for? What am I doing here? What, just asking what, why. And the moment that I got it for myself, that all I have to do is be present. For this life does me naturally, it flows through me, life flows through me. And that's what I am choosing to witness and share and talk to people about. How did you come to that point? And for me, it's also about movement allows that deeper flow. I was never one who could sit in meditation. I'm like, what the hell is this? Sitting and being quiet and ouch, and I mean, nothing's whatever. I can dip into the space when I'm walking, when I'm talking to somebody at work or whatever it is, because I'm present in the situation. And there's something that you say about what meditation really is. um, so I'd like for you to speak on that, like what you say that meditation really is. What are we doing when we're
Great question, because it's funny when we first start meditating, we think we know what it is. And then that whatever we think we know what it is, we try to achieve, and it's so like, and then so we get a moment's peace. Oh, this is meditation. Oh, I'm peaceful now that my mind is completely quiet. And then inevitably for everyone, the mind starts up again. And then we think, oh, I'm not meditating now. What am I getting wrong? And then we get stressed and we hate ourselves and we think everyone else can do it and we can't. And suddenly we're creating a big problem where we didn't even have a problem before we started meditating. So meditation, let's look at what meditation is in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna tells Arjuna to learn to control his mind. And Arjuna says, I can't control my mind. It's all over the bloody place. Of course, I'm paraphrasing that. So he said, I have no control over my mind. So Krishna says, learn to do so through yoga, and really, and meditation as well. And so he's saying really that meditation is a process of, well, let's say there's two things. So let's use even a modern day version of the word meditation, which we could say is mindfulness. So then we have two things. We have a practice of meditation, and then we have a state of being called meditation. And this is where it gets, a bit tangled up. Mm-hmm. So a practice of meditation, as far as I can see, after studying different ways and teachers, meditation, generally what we're talking about is a practice of concentration. It's the ability just to let the mind rest on one thing. But that's not meditation. That's the practice of meditation. So that one thing can be quite often, very popular now, is the breath. So we might just rest the awareness for a while on the breath. Or we might use a mantra. Now look at the word mantra. What does the word mantra mean? It has two root sounds, according to the Vedic teachers. Manas, manas, mind. Tra, focus or protect. So the one that resonates with me, mind, focus. So when we're using a mantra, we're letting the mind just rest on the sound within the head. Maybe if we're doing it silently, which is what they call japa, which was Gandhi's main practice. He practiced it all his life. So we have this, or we might be present to the morning tea. When I'm doing Tai Chi, I'm present to the morning, and maybe present to the movement of my body. So that's a practice of meditation called one-pointed mind. Then the state of being called meditation, again in India, they say has three levels. First stage of meditation is focus, concentration, what we've just described. Second is contemplation. So the second stage of meditation is what we would call inner silence and stillness. So that's a contemplative awareness, comes about naturally over time. Now, when we first hear that, we may presume that means the mind is quiet and empty, but actually that might be the doorway. But contemplation really means there starts to become a place within your being of stillness and calm where you can rest your awareness. This also means that your mind might still be busy, but from a place of contemplation, you're contemplating your mind. That is, you're starting to learn to observe even your thoughts. So the thoughts become like clouds passing through a sky, or you start to observe your central nervous system and the feelings in your body, but you're not swept away by the tide, the stream of activity in your being. You're actually in a vibratory state of stillness or calm awareness. So this is contemplation. And then the third stage they call samadhi in the yoga tradition. Samadhi is the complete dissolution of self, what we would call enlightenment. So they say that that's the third stage of meditation practice that may or may not happen, and it doesn't really matter. And when it happens, it very rarely happens for long, but it's like dipping into the ocean of bliss, the dissolution of self, the awareness of, you could call the soul, the higher self, the Atma, complete divine awareness. I and the Father are one. We can describe it in all these ways. But actually, it says that we don't tend to dwell there in the samadhi states, because there's no interest in the body anymore. So, they say if your body can't survive the samadhi state for more than 21 days, because why would you eat? Why would you drink? It just doesn't matter anymore. So for the purpose of this conversation, where we tend to, or just general conversations around meditation, we talk about the contemplative side, the present, I am now, the observation. So we have those two things. The first is we learn to concentrate initially, because in that concentration, as opposed to having 10,000 thoughts, as Lao Tzu calls it, the 10,000 things, we're just having one thought. So if you imagine in Buddhism, they say the mind is like maybe a lake or a still pond, and that every thought is a wave within that. So when the mind is busy, that place of pure being, Buddha, nature's soul, is like the moon shining down on the pond. So when it's full of ripples, it's very fragmented, the reflection of the true self, if you like. However, when we've learnt to calm the mind, just one thought, maybe just one ripple, or slight movement on the water, eventually, obviously, we get to a place of contemplative awareness when there's no movement, but then it starts to reflect the true self.
Right.
And those people we call saints, Buddhas, who can live in a more fixated place, or a more stabilized place. We can all have that, that the awareness of the Buddha nature, the soul, it's always there. But over time, we're learning to calm the being to reflect that true nature. And what we know when we're there, we know in ourselves when we're there, and we know when we're around other people who are there, not because they wear certain clothes, or not because they get a title, but because they just peaceful. They're more compassionate. They take on the qualities of the true self. So they start to have compassion for all beings. They start to have more wisdom that's even beyond the mind. They just have this peaceful aura, which isn't forced. It's not the trying to be something. So yeah, I guess that is quite a long answer to your question.
It was a beautiful answer, and it reminds me why I so enjoy Tai Chi and Qigong as a physical practice, slash now it's become just dancing, just moving and breathing and being,
Beautiful.
because I have such amazing open access to samadhi, but I'm present, being and doing the movements that are occurring naturally when I'm dancing or when I'm doing Tai Chi Qigong. I mean, that takes more of a mind focus, which I love, because that puts you in the repetition, so it's a different way of practicing mantra when you're doing Tai Chi and Qigong, because the movements are very specific to allow your presence to flow, where at a certain point, yeah, you're not thinking about those movements, you're not thinking, you're just doing and breathing and being that which you are. So that's what I ended up using those practices for. And I just love that we have such a great toolbox to open up the treasure chest of understanding what is this thing here that I'm in? What is this body that I'm in? And what does the mind have to do with this body? And then from that, where's my spirit? What is this? What is this really? What is spirit? What is body? What is mind? How do they interact and co-create uh, my existence? And that's a part of your journey that I also love. So um, if you don't mind speaking a little bit on, and I know you and I have had this conversation quite some time ago when I first discovered you, um, about how in the heck did you what what process did you go through to realize that it's really so freaking simple if you just quiet it, if you just make it still, if you just slow it down, if you're just present?
That's a great question.
Thank
You
you.
know, I remember I was about 40 years old, and I remember praying to God, the universe, and everything, and saying, "Bloody hell!" I was like, "You had Christ up on the cross for 3 days. You've had me up here for about 10 years now." So, like, what was going on? You know. So I just thought, maybe instead of using spirituality as a way of hating myself, thinking there's somewhere else to get to, not seeing myself as good enough. In other words, I think spirituality was me hitting my head against the wall for 20 years and wondering why my head was hurting. Just, or that, maybe more accurate, that would that be knocking on heaven's door with my head. Wait.
Right.
And then almost, I think Rumi says something around the lines of, I can't remember the phrase. I would love to be all wise and remember it at the moment, but I know, and something like the door's already open, stop knocking, something like that, or
Mhm.
something along those lines. So what drove me, I think, is the only thing that drives everyone, suffering. Suffering. Do I want to finally reach my conceptual idea of nirvana and heaven, which I've been chasing and finding bits of and losing, or do I just drop the idea of heaven and nirvana and find out that I've been here the whole time, and it's been the searching that's been screwing me up,
Mm.
do I really want to integrate Christ's teaching of the kingdom of heaven is already at hand, or the Buddhist teaching that nirvana isn't a place, but I think the translation of nirvana is simply the end of suffering. So in other words, do I just want to drop this idea of separation that it seems my mind is creating? And that, now I'm not saying it was like, oh, okay, I got it, you know. It was like, oh, okay, I get it. And then it was about 15, 20 years later, it's like, you know what, I should have start living this now. So it's like, so, I read The Power of Now, and it's like, oh, the initial Satori going through loads of suffering, that, this thing about a pain body, and the pain body is just made up of thinking. And then it's like, oh, right, for 10 years, I tried to stop thinking. That didn't work. So, and so slowly, I think I've been dragged kicking and screaming into myself and into the moment.
Mm.
Like, really? No, I'm not that. Surely, I know that everyone says that, but this guy with he's got hairy shoulders now, and in his 40s, and nasal hair's growing really quick, and I've got hairy toes now. I didn't have those 10 years ago. Can this really be a divine being? And so, yeah, that's been my journey. A slow, painful drag. You heard the story about the guy walking, or the woman walking on the beach and looking back on the life. And so that then the original story is that the person turns to the angel looking back on their lives and says to the angel, I've had so much suffering in my life, and I'm looking back on my life and I'm seeing all those times of suffering. There's only there's only one set of footsteps. Where were you in those times?
Mhm.
And then the angel says, in those times, there's only one set of footsteps because I was carrying you. And that's like that's the story of compassion. But then there's a story I heard more than that. And then the person says, what about those? Well, I'm looking back on the times in my life, and when I was really suffering, there's just this two lines in the sand, and what's that about? And that's when the angel says, oh, that's when I was dragging you kicking and screaming. So
Right?
that's been my path. That's been my
Yeah.
path, being dragged kicking and screaming.
Have-
And so I suppose that I'm just trying to think, maybe the thing was, I gave up on searching. I realized that searching was painful. I realized that building my sense of self on only samadhi states that came and went was painful, and then egoic, because that those samadhi states would go, and then I'd find myself pretending I was enlightened when when it was just me again, confused, lost. So yeah, that's been my path. Yeah,
Yeah.
the realization that the only time I truly feel happy, peaceful, compassionate for myself and other people is where I land in myself as I am, and
Mm.
in the moment of life. And then weirdly, the more I did that, the more my life started to work by itself, as you described. You know, you find your purpose is already, as Steve Jobs has the realization, you know, listen to your heart, it already knows what it wants to become. So yeah, I guess that's it,
And
suffering.
I love that you said you decided to just drop this idea of separation, and that idea of separation from self, but also from what I'm going to say as source, but God's
Mm,
creation, whatever it is. So if you think of yourself as separate and you're like constantly like grasping and clinging and trying to, you feel like you're drowning, but you're the
mm,
one who's doing that to yourself, because there's actually no need. It's so simple. Again, it's there. It's already there. Everything that you need is present. And it took me forever, yes, drag kicking and screaming to just, oh, oh wow, it's is that all I had to do? Is that I didn't have to do any of that? Why did I do that to myself? Hence, again, this podcast, I am really hoping, will help people realize you don't have to do anything. It's done for you already. It's here, it's programmed. You're beautiful and perfect just as you are, just as you are. And recognizing that uh, has been, wow, so amazingly peaceful. People are like, you're glowing, you're glowing. I'm like, yeah, because I'm not chasing my tail in a circle. I've found just, presence. I've found presence. I thank you. I thank you. No more. I don't need to do that to myself. And also just really remaining in, I'm doing Ho'oponopono right now because that Hawaiian prayer is so beautiful, and it does, again, it just brings you present to the moment of like, oh, I can take a deep breath. Oh, wow. I can forgive myself for that. Oh my God, I really love this feeling of that which I am. I really love being in this space of peace. Oh, wow, love, wow, what is this? Is so, I've surrendered. It's beautiful.
beautiful. Yeah, this Ho'oponopono prayer is beautiful to me because it has the two qualities of spiritual practice, which are very, very valuable. And the one is that because it's a prayer or a mantra in itself, it creates concentration and focus. And then the second thing, it brings in the qualities that are essential to self-healing,
Mm,
which, and what I mean self-healing, it's coming back into the view of ourselves from what we could call the true self, the soul, the Buddha nature, the Atma. You see, that self is unconditional love.
mm,
And so that's the beautiful switch over, that when we realize we have both an enlightened self and an unenlightened self, the first thing we do is try and separate those two things. But actually, the things like the Ho'oponopono prayer, they show us that actually that's not the job.
mm,
The job is to see what we could call the unenlightened self as something we can love unconditionally as it is. And then we're seeing ourselves in that moment through the eyes of Source, because we have, Source isn't bothered about us. People pray for forgive. Oh, please forgive me. How that's kind of quite a big judgment on Source. That's like, oh, source is judgmental, right? The beginning of that prayer, that's like, oh, somehow I'm not worthy of source. Somehow I need to pray for forgiveness from source. Source is like light. It doesn't say I'll shine on the saint more than the criminal. It just shines. That's all it knows to do. And so source only knows how to, it just knows love, nothing but that. So then the judgment, really what we're trying to do is to see ourselves, the unenlightened self, through the lens of, because we are that source energy at the deepest fundamental level.
Yeah.
So when we're offering forgiveness to ourselves and the world, what we're really doing is dissolving the belief in the belief that we've created in judgment and separation. So yeah, I love the Ho'oponopono, like, please forgive me, I love you, thank you. It's beautiful because it's the mantra of pure awareness. So it's the word. It's yeah, beautiful. Yeah, great practice.
It really is. And I've been through a lot of practices.
Yeah, beautiful. I remember the first I did that for about for a while, and as my main practice. And every night before I fell asleep, I would have visions from my childhood,
Mm,
times where people had judged me harshly for things, and it's quite understandable that they would do that because I was clumsy and I was all kinds of stuff. So I get it. But what was interesting is that within those memories, I had to forgive, using the Ho'oponopono prayer, everyone involved. So I had
mm,
to I did the Ho'oponopono prayer to my past self, so to the
mm,
child, so forgive the child. But then I would also realize that I would have to forgive those who I thought had judged me or been harsh on me for some behavior pattern. So yeah, it was really powerful for that, to bring the awareness of the light into memories I was carrying,
mm.
to help dissolve those in relation to who I'd become as an adult, and then therefore to change the experience of that adult, and the perception of themselves and life. So yeah, beautiful practice.
It is, and to me, it makes this process of walking through the fire, I mean, being dragged, kicked, and screaming, kicking and screaming,
Mm.
it just calms it so much, you know. Um, it just really stops the spinning and brings the focus in the sphere of focus, um, and cleaning house, cleaning
I
house.
like I like the idea that the crucifixion is the realization. I had this understanding that the crucifixion isn't happening to us. When we're being crucified, my teacher in India said the sign of the cross is the I being crossed out. And so then the crucifixion is happening to who we think that we are.
Hmm.
So that it's only that's burning, and that's part of, I think, of the awakening process, that we think we're being destroyed and broken down because we're attached to the idea of who we think we are. And then a lot of that suffering might not even be coming from what's actually happening. It's coming from the reaction we're having to what's happening, and what that means, and how that always happens to me in the past, how this will mean that this thing is going to happen, the future. So all the sufferings are rising from the artificial self. It's clinging to the past. It's worries about the future. The story of, this shouldn't be happening to me. What will people think? It's the drama that's being created by the situation that creates the suffering, and that drama tends to be the way that the mind has been programmed to react to these things. And that's most of the. Now, I'm not discounting people have physical pains and sicknesses that creates suffering that is, very unfavorable.
Mm,
But a lot of the suffering, it just comes from the addiction to name and form and status and money and all that stuff, you know. But the bizarre thing is that Christ tells us that once we find the kingdom of heaven, he said, you know what, one of my favorite teachings on what you could call the law of attraction is that he says, seek first the kingdom of heaven. Now he's already told us that that's at hand. It's already in our midst. So first find what already is. And then he says, and act, I think, with righteousness. Now, righteousness is a problem because Lao Tzu says, be careful of righteousness. So, because it can pump up our ego, it makes it, I'm right, you're wrong. You know, I call it sometimes rightness, like I'm right, you know, it's a problem. So I prefer the word love, you know, so act with love, compassion. And then he says, so first, be in the present. Secondly, act from a place of love and gentleness and compassion. And then he says, and that everything will be added unto you. And
Yeah.
so really he's saying when you live in that presence, when you're gentle and compassionate with yourself and others, everything that you see, like Sue says, you know, that the ocean is the lowest. The ocean is lower than all the streams, which is why all the streams run into it. He said it's humility that gives it its power. In other words, you know, as the Dalai Lama says, you know, the higher you become in really in your nature, the lower the lower you have to bow down. So, you know, and I think that comes naturally because the more light that you hold, the more you see your own darkness. But then, you know, we hopefully I've explained that darkness isn't a problem. So our humility comes from the realization that, oh, right, I've become some level of awake. But within that, I see that I'm just as broken as everyone else.
Right.
That hasn't changed. So I'm nothing special. But what I have is the ability to deal with my brokenness, my jealousy, my insecurity, that hasn't gone away. And I think that's why you see a lot of the Buddhist monks laughing all the time. You know, they're laughing at the human condition. Here I am, you know, it's the cosmic, eternal, deathless self has incarnated as a hairy little guy with neurosis and self-importance. I mean, if that doesn't make you laugh for the rest of your life, you know, like I could have been anything. I could have been stardust, a cosmic consciousness, and here I am, this hairy little guy from Manchester with neurosis and self-importance issues. If that's not funny and doesn't keep me laughing for the rest of my life, I don't know what will, you know?
Right. So then, you know, I just keep hearing talking about desire, because that's been a big part of my journey, is clinging to this desire to be something, this desire to, you know, to need, to have, to want, to be, to do. So I just wanted to hear your thoughts on desire.
Beautiful. That's such a great question. So the Buddha says that, you know, it's the biggest, it's the root cause of all suffering. And I think then that can be understood. When I first heard that, I thought, okay, I'll get rid of all my wants. And for a few years, I hadn't realized I'd become so full of attachment to non-attachment. I was so proud that I didn't have attachment. And this was one of the biggest attachments I ever had. Like I was sick all the time. I was grumpy because I didn't have, everyone had to buy me food, you know, I was just, my life was a mess, but I was so proud, you know, and now I was Buddha-like because, you know, I didn't own anything. And it was just, my life was a mess. And so I think what I would describe as desire is the belief that something that we don't already have or something we aren't already can fulfill and complete us.
Wow.
So that there's artificial desires, which is, I need this to be happy. Now, I would say desire is a perfect thing. Desire is like, look, there's something missing here. I should be happy. I should be peaceful. So I would say desire is the faulty understanding that's been programmed into us since birth, that the end of suffering lies in me getting something outside of myself. You know, maybe the emptiness, which is the doorway to my soul, can be filled with money or adoration. Now, of course, we need money, and it's nice to have people love us. No one's going to deny that. You know, we're social creatures, and being loved and loving is one of the most beautiful human conditions that there is. But the problem is that when we grasp for that, when we demand that the world loves us, then because we have a desire to be loved, that's when no one really loves us, and we think, oh my god, this person's a pain in the ass to be around. You know, they demand to be loved. And you know, you hear the celebrities, you know, that are hard to be around because they demand adoration, or they demand this, and they don't get the very thing they're looking for. People might pretend to love them when they're famous, or you know, they can get something out of them, but it's not real. So desire is, yeah, it's the belief in separation and the grasping for something to fulfill that pain, that we're separate, whereas that there's another form that I'm comfortable to call desire, which is a natural desire. So when we're in that place, we tend to like the light has a desire to shine. We could say that way. It doesn't need the desire because that's what it does. But when we're in ourself, we start to have natural compulsions to serve, to be kind, to forgive, because that's the nature of this self. We also will have a desire to look after this body, because the body is um, the container for the soul. So I have a desire to do physical exercise a few times a week. I love my kettlebell or my Tai Chi. I have a desire to meditate because it stills my mind. Maybe for about 3 hours a week, I have a desire to eat healthily. So I'm still working on that one. And then, so we have these, yeah. So if let's boil it down to its the real simple part, of course, these things have branches that grow into all kinds of theories and philosophies that can support us. But desire at its core is, I'm not complete, and I'm going to grasp, I'm going to manipulate, and I'm going to force the world to give me the thing I need that will take that pain away. Yet it's the other way around. When we let go of the belief that we need any of those things to make us happy, the pain goes by itself. And then when we're back in that state of heaven, everything we need will be given unto us. So the love, the attention, the things that the soul feels intrinsically, you know, they just seem to happen.
Well, thank you, Graham, so much. That's such a beautiful way to complete this journey in with you. And I hope that my listeners or our listeners are filled with presence and
Hmm.
just, you know, the idea that you are already whole and healed within yourself. Your natural state is whole and healed and complete with the presence of everything that you already are.
Thanks so much for having me along today or this evening, wherever you're based. I really appreciate it, Farida. It's been beautiful to have this conversation with you.
Thank you. Um, cool. I stopped the other recording. See, I've learned
Great.
I have to have this. I did it before you said thank you, but that's why I have two different recordings going because
Amazing.
my goodness, you know, I'm learning.
Yes, it's wonderful what you're doing. This is really beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm enjoying it. You know, at first I was like, introduce them, and I'm like, what? I get nervous doing. I don't need to
Be
say a
yourself.
blah 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 of who you are and what you freaking do. I don't. I'm sorry, frankly. I not that I don't give a shit, but I don't give a shit about your. I want you present here, us,
Beautiful.
having this open conversation
Mm.
so that it is fully driven by love and presence and whatever you want to call it, God, who, whatever. It's us here talking, presenting
Mm.
what is occurring, what is meant to be heard on my talk with you, and I feel so much more comfortable and relaxed. Like, it's 11, whatever, it's midnight now, whatever time it is. I'm like, I'm just here. Okay, I didn't want to. I woke up, I was like,
Yes.
fuck, I was in a dream. I'm like, what are you doing? I was like, okay,
Great.
I gotta catch Graham. You're important. Like, I really love your presence. I love what your energy and the gift that you have that moves through you. And so it was just such a perfect conversation. Thank you.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much. It's been the first one of these I've ever done, so it's really
Nice.
great to speak to you.
Oh, yay. I'm so
Mm.
glad. Yeah,
Mm,
and
me too.
so January 21st is when I'm going to make it live on. It's going to go to iTunes, and I'm just hoping that whoever I talk to will share, like the week before or
Absolutely.
whatever, that hey, this I was on this podcast, blah blah blah.
100%.
And
Yeah.
I'll try to get a clip of our interview. Um, I just take a 5-minute clip and we can just put that out. But then another friend
Great.
who I interviewed said, we can put these interviews on Facebook, or what, little clips of
Amazing.
these interviews, you know, or I could just have
Send
it
me
live
a,
real quick to talk about.
send me oh yeah, I'd be 100% happy. Just send me to do that. Send me any promotional material you have, and I'll yeah, even just mention we've had this chat and when the podcast starts and all
Yeah,
that kind of stuff today.
yeah, yeah. I'm excited.
So my yeah, I look forward
It's
to listening to your other ones as well.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, you have a really beautiful, natural way of presenting as well, Farida. It's very natural. It's you also. There's a lot of interviewers, and this is fine as well. You know that. No, how should no, it's I'll stick to you. You're one of your beautiful things is you're just happy to listen, you
Oh,
know, and to absorb, but also to share your experiences, which are also beautiful as well. But yeah, it felt very natural to have a conversation with you. It's really lovely.
it's thanks. It's what drives me. I've always and it's funny because now that I've allowed this to move through me and said, okay, 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 I got it. I'll do it. I'll do
Mm.
it.
Amazing.
And
Yeah,
I've
amazing.
always enjoyed stimulating conversations that are just like, well, no, I don't think that that's what it is at all. Or is it this? Or like philosophical discussions, or open, just being an open vessel and container for spirit speak
Beautiful.
to move through. And so that's where this came from. And now I'm like, okay, I don't need to do, like, once I realized I don't need to do that shit. I'm not good at that. It makes me, no, I just want to talk to you and listen to what you have to say. And I want to make it just totally natural. So that's where I'm going. And thank you for that input, because I do
Ah, you're
enjoy
welcome.
it. See, that's the thing. When you just let it flow, you get to do
Yes,
what you enjoy. It's like,
100%.
you shine because you're enjoying and you're sharing, and your love is here, it's here, it's happening.
Mm,
So
beautiful.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Da, 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 the podcast is called New Heart Transformation.
Beautiful.
And thank you. And that came along just from me asking God, what are we calling this? What is this about?
Mm,
And I think it's in no, where is it? It's um yeah, it's in Ecclesiastes somewhere. He talks about new heart. I'm going to give you a new heart, and
beautiful.
throughout the Bible there's all this information on new heart, and I'm not versed, but I do. um I receive. I asked and I received the verse
Beautiful.
where this name came from. So um again, reinforce that it's God fed and spirit led, you know,
Mm,
conversations about your heart, about what's, you know, what's on your heart, what's happening, what are we bringing forth here in this world. So thank
beautiful.
you, thank you, thank
Oh, thank you, thank you. And I guess I'll speak to you soon. But send me any information or materials you want to share, and I'll be happy to do that.
you. Awesome. Yeah, I feel like January is so far away, but I'm like, oh shit, it's
It's coming
December's
quickly.
almost gone.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, wonderful. Have a
Well,
great
have yeah,
day.
thank you, and have a beautiful sleep.
Thank you. Like, see, I got, you know, I'm learning from this little lady. She's
Oh,
just a baby. She's
oh,
a
he's so
tiny
cute.
baby.
Is
Yeah.
she letting you sleep without attacking your feet all night?
Oh, hell no. She climbs all over my face. Oh, she get to this point between 12 and 2. She's
Yes.
like a frisky kitty. I'm
Yeah.
like, girl, can't you just do this? She got her shots the other day, and this is how she was all night. I was like, mommy gets to sleep. I didn't,
Brilliant.
I didn't want, I didn't want, but she's like, no, I want you. Oh,
Oh, that's so
yeah.
sweet.
Her name is Tavali
Oh,
Nalamanuel.
beautiful.
Yeah, she's
Hi,
beautiful.
Diwali.
Yeah, Tavali. She's like, I sleepy.
Amazing. Mm.
Yeah. All right, love. Cheers.
See you again soon.
Yes. Ciao.